Hey, friends, we're back for another lovely episode and hopefully even lovelier questions on One Great Question with the how would I describe Callie Murray? I was going to launch into some like long bio, but we were actually just chatting before we jumped on here that she's currently being wrangled by her seven children after being on a network television interview, and the altitude difference of that from professional space to hunkered in a corner of her room. And you never know where you're going to find successful people in 2026 based on the ability to Zoom. So would love to welcome Callie Murray to the podcast.
Thank you. I love that.
So, Callie, I was thinking about this the other day. You and I met, as we would say in South Africa, dogs years ago. So, ages ago in Norcross, which is where your new book is located, at a little coffee shop. It was something, I think the Northern Star or something like that.
That's right. It's
That's
changed
right.
names since, but yep.
Yeah, yeah. And I couldn't remember. And so maybe you can jog my memory. I don't know if you remember this evening. You were promoting a new thing that you were doing in Atlanta. And I couldn't remember if I was a guest or a musical guest because I would play around town and I met Aaron and you and a couple of other people. And just remember walking into this space and immediately going, I don't know how somebody has made what was a lovely homey coffee shop, but you walked in instantly and it felt like you knew everybody and I knew nobody. And I was just curious for you how you've been able to kind of cultivate those spaces and if you remember that evening.
That is funny. Okay, that's ancient. You're right.
Yeah.
That was when I was starting what I guess was my first business. It was photography. And I was like, I think I was college dropout age somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, that's so funny. I haven't thought about that night in a long time. I think I would credit the feeling of that night just to good people. Like I think we're just really blessed to have really great people that uh, are for whatever reason always coming and being a part of my weird stuff.
Yeah. And when you say weird stuff, this is the thing that I love is obviously, I've named a company Curiosity because I love endlessly curious people who show up, even when they're powerful and they're older and they have some acumen, who still show up as the 8-year-old version of themselves. And I think in every endeavor that I've ever come around with you, there's always been incredible acumen, whether it's the photography or the event stuff through the Nut Wedding or you building online presences or now the book. It's always going like, oh, you're always a 9 or 10 out of 10 in terms of the capacity. But there's this deep sense of curiosity that goes, yeah, but couldn't this be more fun? Couldn't this be more whimsical, especially with something like the Not Wedding? So would love to know from you, where do you attribute that level of curiosity to?
Wow, good question. It's funny. So it's just me and my brother, and he makes a living in golf comedy. So that is his. And then I made a living for 10 years in fake weddings. I had a fake wedding company, which we could talk about if you want. And so people are often, when they find out we're related, are like, what did your parents do? and, um, and so I think I would attribute a lot to my parents. My mom was a pharmacist, so nothing crazy. My dad was a builder. But I do think it was a mix of they are very creative people. And we grew up in a culture of just like, yeah, you can do it, try it. And
Yeah.
so, like, even this fake wedding company, I was, yeah, college dropout trying to launch my photography business. And I think I just had that privilege safety net of like, yeah, give this a shot.
Yeah. Yeah, what an amazing thing. And you're so right too, because I've been fortunate enough to work alongside Aaron. We did a pecan campaign in the southeast for the pecan growers of Georgia. And I just remember when Aaron and I sat down and started hashing out ideas, he would just come out with one liner after one liner after one liner. And I was like, I was just along for the ride with this incredibly talented person who, again, remains endlessly curious. And so now, if anybody's curious, you can go follow St. Andre and Big Bird Agency are Aaron's things. Actually, I was just messaging him on Instagram earlier because he's making a new video for his favorite football team, which is Arsenal, and their victory a couple of days ago. So we go back and forth on that. But yeah, it's fascinating, like you said, when you're raised in an environment where people are like, yeah, try it, fail forward, like see what you learn, figure that thing out. And so I'd be curious, if we're talking about 8-year-old Callie in that environment where you've got parents who, like you said, have fairly prescriptive jobs, like literally a pharmacist writing prescriptions and a builder following the prescriptions of a building code. What would that 8-year-old version of you be excited about for the version of you that's here today?
Yeah, Freddie, if I think truly eighth grade, what is that, second or 8 years old, second
Eight
grade
years old.
maybe?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I started a magazine company, and I called it ELAC Online, which does not make any sense. ELAC was Callie spelled backwards. Online, I think the internet was becoming a thing, but I literally nothing about it was online. I made a magazine and would copy it on my dad's Xerox, and I would sell it at school. And so I think 8-year-old Callie would be like, "Yeah, we saw this coming."
That's incredible. And so, but if you were to now take 8-year-old Callie and put her in your shoes today, you got 7 kids running around the house. You've got this amazing book you've just released. You've been in these spaces. What would she be most excited about or in awe of that you get to do in this season of your life?
Yeah, Carl, I'm hearing it's going in and out a little bit. Are you there
Yeah,
with me?
sorry. Yeah,
Can you
I'm
hear me
here.
okay?
Yep, I can hear you. So I'll
Okay,
pose the question one
okay.
more time.
Let me know if it gets
Yeah, no, it's great. That's the beauty of all things Zoom and internet these days. I think it just catches up at the end and does its thing. So either way, having fun. Um, yeah, if the 8-year-old version of Callie got to be in your shoes today, got to walk alongside you for the day, what would she be most excited about? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we get to do this thing. Or hold on, we did what? Like, what's the thing she
Yeah,
would be in
our life
awe of?
right now is weird. I have an HR company. That's like my main gig, and that's an entrepreneurial venture. But it's like there's nothing flashy about it, but it's just a good business. I've got this historical fiction book I just released, and I think that feels like 8-year-old Callie would get real excited about that. And then our family, I feel like we've kind of followed our what's felt like this nudge and calling in our life, and we've just adopted. And so I think 8-year-old Callie would be like, "Great, you're." Oh, oh, so sorry, Carl. I'm getting it's
No.
saying I'm like dropping. I know. I can try. Do me try and move into another spot?
You're welcome to if you want to. Again, this is, I mean, we're not fussy, and I think it'll all catch up in
Let me
the
try. I think the
but
kids
yeah,
just left.
so this will be more fun anyway. Of going, hey, this is real. Like we're just having a real chat. So we're not trying to be polished on
Okay,
any.
great. All right.
So please
I think the
don't be
kids
stressed
just
on my
went.
account.
Okay, we're gonna try this. You there?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat any of that or catch?
Yeah, if you we can queue up the question one more time. What's the 8-year-old version of Callie excited to walk alongside you today about?
Yeah, I think our life right now doesn't make a ton of sense on paper, and I've got this HR company that is kind of like my main job that I've gotten to build. Nothing flashy about it, but it's just a good business. And then I've got this historical fiction novel, and that's maybe more the flashy part, but does not track at all with HR company. And then we just got to adopt on the personal side. And so I think there
Yay.
would just be a sense of like, oh, you're getting to do it. Like you're getting to do the things, even if it really doesn't make any sense. I am not a clean LinkedIn narrative. I feel like, you see people at parties and it's like, what's going on? And I don't feel like I have a very clean, short answer to give them, but I feel like we're getting to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think honestly that's the lovely thing about you and David and the life that you guys are building is it is this sense of it doesn't have to be linear because I think there's a myth in that it is ever linear. It's kind of we have a conversation in my work at Curiosity about the difference between order versus balance, and
Mm-hmm.
that balance is a myth.
Mm-hmm.
And you can quickly kind of prove it, right? If I asked you who are 5 humans on the planet who you really admire the way they handle their marriage, their parenting, their work, their friendship, their self care, and that they're doing that thing at a 10 out of 10 at all times. And you're like, no, like, I don't know it. Like, I take little pieces of lots of different people and I admire them, but there's nobody I've ever met that's living in perfect balance all the time. But you can order your life in such a way that goes, oh, here's the HR thing, here's the book thing, here's the kid thing, here's the marriage thing, and how today does the order work? And how do I become intentional about those things? And so I think the beauty, especially in the age in which we live, in which I hear quite a lot of people talk about wanting to write books, so much so that I've got, friends, and a guy in town, Joe Bunting, and another friend out of town, Jeff Goins, who help people like write their books, because it's like, oh, I've got this burning thing to say. But they're like, I'm an accountant, or I'm a dentist, or I'm in between jobs, and I don't know if I can, and so for you to go adoption and HR company and book, and it's not a going, I have to have it all and it needs to be really polished and pretty. It's just going, oh, there's permission to fail forward and try new things in the midst of other busy things.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
for sure. And I think there's a cost to it. Like this is something David and I have said multiple times this year is like, we, uh, we are trying something, kind of ridiculous. It's not all that we even signed up for the timing of all of this, or, yeah, we didn't sign up for all the hard parts right now,
mhm.
but you have to kind of recognize that, like, yeah, it means we are going to be exhausted, or at times, or things will be messy at times, and you kind of have to hold that intention.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, with the two of you, when you're holding the tension of that, how do you adjust the tension when it feels like either the book or the HR, his thing, or one of the kids is going through something? Is that like an intentional cadence? Is it just, hey, I noticed this thing and how let's chat about that? Is there uh, an active like thinking through that, or is it more responding to it?
Man, I wish there was like a very clear, active, proactive thing here. But I guess the honest answer is, last summer we had a sibling group of 4 kiddos join our family through foster care, and they're the coolest. We got to finalize the adoption this past week,
Hey,
but
congrats.
as you can imagine, it's kind of a torpedo to everybody's life, and so Dave and I have talked a lot this year about how there's the things like, you know, the book or work, or um, there's things, and then there's like the deep existential how your soul's processing stuff. And I feel like this kind of was a torpedo to all the things, and we've had to really face a lot of the deeper stuff before we can ever talk about processes, or um, how to make the most and of time and all of that. That all feels like we'll get there one day. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think the more honest, messier answer is, we've had so many deep, deep conversations and counseling and talking with friends and all of that. And I think maybe in the future we'll get to great processes and how we're going to maximize everything. But right now, that's kind of where we've been.
Oh, well, I think in the midst of this, obviously, it's insanely admirable to welcome 4 new stunning humans into your world and go from, a family with 3 kids to 7. So you go from, 5 to 9 sort of thing overnight. And obviously with lots of turmoil, because I have lots of friends also in the foster system, and I just know what a toll that is, both in and out of the house, in and out of the emotions. And then when it gets finalized, it's like, sigh of relief. So we're celebrating that. And also it's like, oh, so, okay, how do we carry this now? Because there's a sense of permanence. So, like you said, endless hope and turmoil in the midst of all that. Which leads to our next question, which we want to ask in the Instagram, LinkedIn age in which we live, that it's very easy to see success at a distance. And like what you talked about, going to a cocktail party, and they're like, oh, their thing feels very linear and the edges are done. Well, you have a fairly linear, beautiful new thing, and that this is Callie's new book here, and stunningly well done, and would feel like, oh, that's the marker of success. Not only is it stunning artwork, you have the other book on my desk here is Alan Levi's Theo of Golden, and he wrote a lovely little thing in here in which he said of the book, it is a delight and a beautiful bit of art. By the way, I love reading things by really great writers who's like, could you have said a nicer thing? A beautiful bit of art. I really want somebody to say that about something I write one day. Um, and so as you process something like that, I mean, this is like the win. Anybody else would look at that and be like, oh my gosh, Callie's an author. She's going on TV and talking about it. She's got these big release parties, one of which my wife came to. That's where we got the books, I think, so autographing that for her. Um, but there's always a cost to that thing, right? And we're talking about the HR business and the marriage and the kids and all these things. When you look at the cost of maybe writing a book, we'll just try and be specific to that. And, we're all believing in your community that it's going to be a massive success, and we're going to push, as much as we can behind it because it's a story worth telling and worth reading. What do you think that might have cost you? And were you to know that when you started it, however long ago, would you have gone, I'll still sign up for that fee?
Goodness, great question, which I know you're good at. I would say there's a couple different types of cost. So there's like the time cost, right? Which when I started this book, my husband was training for a marathon, and I pitched him on could I train to write a novel? And so that's where we set these blocks of time where this is where I'm going to write, and I'm going to listen to podcasts, and I'm going to study. And that's just kind of how we prioritized it, which was great for a couple years. And then when I signed a book deal, I become subject to somebody else's timeline. And I have adored my publisher, but they've got a thing going, you know what I mean? And you just kind of like jump into their wheel. And so when they slot me for a May release, we didn't know that I would have 7 children. And that would be our very first May, Maycember, Maymageddon, whatever, with 7 children.
Yeah, May Mageddon is right. Jeez.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden my very tidy, here are my training hours, gets blown out of the water. So I think time is definitely a cost. I think there is the emotional cost of taking something so personal, which, I mean, Alan said it, art, like it's such a personal thing. There's a lot of my story in that book, even though it's historical fiction. And then just handing it over to the world and saying, how many stars do you want to give it? And so I think that was a cost. I had this, wedding business we've mentioned, and I really struggled through that whole decade. Anytime we would get feedback, I would take it very personally. And so now I'm walking into this project. I mean, it wasn't personal feedback. It was about a business. But now this is Callie Murray on the cover. And I'm having to walk into this going, I know this is going to be hard for me. And so some of it's guardrails. My husband said, don't you dare read reviews. But there's also just kind of knowing that as art is, it's subjective. And so anyway, there's the emotional cost. And then I think like you mentioned it, social media is not real life. And so you're going to put out there, these are the wins, this is what we want you to know. But then there's all these undercurrents. It's like we talked about the changing altitudes of, here's a interview with the TV station, but here's this really hard relational dynamic I'm working through that I'll never tell a TV station about because that's not appropriate. And so I think there's just, I think there's some exhaustion in that for sure. But I mean, that's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And for somebody else, who is interested in authoring something, would you look back on this and go, oh, that was the bill up until this point has been at least worth it. Who knows what happens with the book going forward and, all the Amazon reviews and all that sort of stuff. But up to this point, do you look at that and go, man, I'm really glad I took a swing on that?
Yeah, totally worth it. Yeah, totally worth it. And then, yeah, you mentioned it too. The book, you have a thing to hold. Like there is a release date. It is a physical thing. My sweet community here threw this launch party for us on Saturday, and you show up and it's color coordinated, and they have a giant book printed. And I, on the way there, I just thought there's so many people in this community that we could be celebrating. Like, they've raised twins. They made it through having twin newborns, and like they've built this company and they've navigated hard things with their parents. And like, but a book, like it has the color palette, it's public. And so, I think it's totally been worth it. It feels unfair sometimes. Like I guess what I mean is I feel like anything hard and anything worth celebrating, we would all say it's worth it. This just feels a little bit more public, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, one of the things I've always loved and respected about you, though, is the ability to gather other humans and to highlight them and to, put a spotlight on the hard things they've gone through and the things that they've powered through to accomplish. And I think that's also, I mean, a testament to even the book, because the whole theme is around that, right? You've got this Norcross, Georgia thing. You've got, World War II. You've got Foster, and these stories are about people living through really hard things. I was actually just even yesterday at a bookstore looking at because my family were headed to Oxford in a couple weeks, and I wanted to like, hey, I haven't read about Tolkien and Lewis in a while, and they talked about this idea that all of their literature was born out of their time on the front lines during World War One. And
Mm-hmm.
having gone through these things and then creating friendships and groups. And it feels strange to me that, 100 years later, I'm going, how do I build friendships? How do I invest in my friendships and my community? Like you said, your lovely little community in ways it could build legacy for a century afterwards, where we look at Lewis and Tolkien and the rest of the people around the Inklings and go, isn't that something just so worth having, that even though two of them were predominantly more notable than the others in terms of recognition, all of them were lovely humans who were doing hard things, and Lewis and Tolkien wanted to celebrate them. And I think this is an ability that you have and have had, whether it was in the photography or the not wedding or even the HR thing, going, how do we see people in the workplace, and now into the book. And so I, just laud the fact that you would even concern yourself in the midst of a book launch going, how do I celebrate my friend who's coming through twins, when they're going, you wrote a book. Like, that's just a lovely perspective to have on this. And so I would love to ask, like, for those who haven't come across it, and again, lovely little plug for such a stunning cover. I want to live in that house, is I think the first thing that most people do. So like, oh, what a beautiful place. Can you tell us more about the book?
Yeah, totally. So the Brunswick is historical fiction. It's 1939, set predominantly in Norcross, Georgia, which is the little town where I live, just north of Atlanta. And it is a story of a girl, Cora Kane, who is asked to use her family's old hotel, the Brunswick, to house Jewish refugee children. So the war is brewing overseas. It's not quite war yet, but it is. There's Nazi occupation. Things are not good. And so yeah, this is where Cora finds herself, and there's all these layers to the story, but that's the premise.
Amazing. And so somebody picking up who goes, I love historical fiction, what might surprise them? And for somebody who's like, I'm not a big historical fiction person, what would attract them?
Yeah, so I made a list before I started writing about what do I want, what do I love about my favorite books, and what do I want this book to be. And I love like the banter and the tension in modern day rom-coms, but I also love the historical facts and setting and depth of historical fiction. And so I would say if you're not a historical fiction fan, I do like there's some lightness to it, some romance, some of that I think you might like. Um, but to my historical fiction fans, yeah, it's a new take on World War II fiction. I think the cover even says, what is it? A World War II novel of the American South.
Yeah.
Is I think kind of confusing because you're like, what?
Yeah. Gripping and curiosity inspiring for sure when I read it the first time.
But I think that's one of the things I've seen in a lot of the reviews that I read before I was told not to stop reading reviews. It's a different look at World War II fiction.
Yeah. Which is honestly the thing that I would need to hear, because I'm like, man, it's the last thing that I need in my world is to read one more thing about World War II. Mostly because I think it's it's a funny thing in comedy now where they're like, hey, you've turned 40 now. Here's your World War II book and your couch and the one thing you were insanely angry about all the time. So these are your welcome to 40 gifts as a cisgender white male in America in your 40s. I was like, I don't know if I can read it. So
I know.
um,
It's funny. It's 1939, so it's before the wars even started. I actually had our publisher. We went through so many emails about, do we call it a World War II novel, because
hmm,
it's technically not. But I've always been fascinated by how did World War II start? And think about this season beforehand. People didn't know there was going to be a war. They didn't know it would be, I mean, World War One was called the Great War because they didn't know there'd be a second, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
I think I was curious about that season. Obviously making it relevant, thinking about um, thinking about today, like when might we know there might be uh, a war that,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's a stunning new perspective, which I really appreciate. So if somebody's looking to grab it or looking to share it or looking to help Callie in getting a great new book out into the world, how can people do that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's in all the places. You can get it online at Amazon or bookshop.org or Target or Barnes and Noble, all those places. It's in some local shops, and hopefully it'll continue to grow into more. And then my kind of approach has been I want people to be advocates of this book and feel some ownership of it too. So there's a website, calliemurray.com/book. And this has all of my it's my launch wish list. These are the ways that you can learn more about the book and really get involved in sharing it.
Amazing. So for other people who are listening to this and are inspired, they're going, okay, Callie's written a book, Carl's in the middle of writing one. What would you say if they're going, hey, I've either got the seed for one in my brain or my heart, and I'm trying to work through that, or they're already 150 pages in. They're like, I don't know what to do with it now. What advice would you give to that new author who's kind of trying to follow your path?
Yeah. Um, oh man, so many things I could say. Um, One of the best pieces of advice I received is write the first draft for you. So write this first draft for yourself. Tell the story to yourself, or if it's nonfiction, like get the point out to yourself. And don't let this, don't worry about timelines or what other people are going to say, and just tell the story to yourself. And for me, that's what I did with the first draft. And then I had my husband and a friend read it. And the first draft was not great, but it was a start. But having them get into the story was when I thought, oh, like readers is where it's at. And that for me was what kind of made me want to go all in on publishing it and having it be something where I could really share it with readers. But I would say start with first draft. Um, and then I think the other thing is I made that Apple note on my phone at the very beginning of what do I want this book to be. And that was so helpful. And at multiple times I would go back and read it. And um, when I decided to publish, I wrote a note of what do I want? What is success? What do I want this publication to process to be like? And the day it came out last week, I sat there and read it. And so I think that would be my other kind of practical advice is like set your attentions from the beginning.
Oh, I love that. And one piece I think that you got from your early readers would be one of the things that I've followed for many years that a mentor gave to me. He said, "Don't take criticism from somebody you wouldn't take advice from."
Yeah, that's good.
And, I think probably also helpful when you go and start reading through your Amazon reviews on one weak moment in 3 weeks, where you're like, I need a little pick me up. And you're like, is this where I get it? Be like, okay, I'm not listening to user hot dog 787, but,
Right.
if I'm listening to, Keats Lover, okay, maybe they have something to
Yeah.
say, So, um, well, I'd love to wrap up with the last question here, Callie, which is, if you look back, obviously your life has been defined by many great questions. I wonder what it would be like to be married to David. I wonder what it would look like to foster. I wonder what it would look like to start the Not Wedding. I wonder what writing a book could feel like. So the byproduct of our life is the byproduct of great questions. And as you look back either at this season or previous seasons or maybe ever, is there a question that comes to mind that you're like, oh my gosh, I do. I remember my one of my parents asked me this, or a friend asked me this, or actually 6 weeks ago, somebody asked me this, and you find it has shifted or is shifting the way that you're kind of approaching life in a pretty powerful and meaningful way.
Yeah, great question. So meta, a question about questions. Um, when my first thought is my father-in-law, Bill, who knew Bill well. We called him,
Wow.
and he was a great question asker. But one thing that he would say often, it was actually incredibly frustrating because you would come to him and ask for advice, and he would just ask you questions back.
He would. He was so frustrating. Be like, Bill, I'm in my 20s. Give me some answers. He's like, no, that's not what I'm here for. I'm like,
No,
Bill, help me out.
but he's probably said this to you too. He would say, "What's the worst thing that could happen?"
Oh,
And he wouldn't mean it as like this, feel bad about yourself. He would mean it like, truly, go down that path, and I want you to decide what's the worst thing that could happen. And it's
hmm,
funny because you would be like, yeah, I don't know, I might get a bad review. Okay, well, what's so bad about that? What if I fail? What if everyone turns against me? What if I die? I mean, you just start
yeah,
going on this path,
yeah,
but it pretty quickly makes you realize how ridiculous you're being.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and it also just makes you realize what's important.
Hmm.
And so I've thought that so many times with projects I've done, and we've talked about it with my kids all the time too. It's just become a like, okay, I see you're being really anxious about this. Let's work it out. What's the worst thing that could happen?
Hmm.
And it doesn't always lead to a yes. I mean, sometimes you go like, oh, like right now, if we were to go start a new giant project, like we pretty quickly could get to something that's just not worth it. So
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't always lead to a just do it yes moment. But yeah, what's the worst that could happen?
Oh, I love that. And it's funny that you say that because my wife and I, Catherine, ran across Bill and Kitty in very early in our marriage. And I remember Bill asking something to that. And it's helping me connect dots because I remember probably about 5 or 6 years later, I'm the adventurer. I'm the let's say yes, let's, try big new things. And Catherine is the bright and intelligent one of the two of us going, let me ask some questions here. But sometimes it can leave her a little, an analysis by paralysis sort of moments. And I would just, in my early married days, when I was dumber than I am currently, which is hard to imagine, I would be like, no, it's fine. It's just going to be fine. It's fine. And I wouldn't validate any of those things. And there must have been some, ghost of Bill's wisdom running around. Because I remember about 5 years into the marriage, I started just going, well, tell me how bad could this get? And genuinely being, I was like, I will jump on the train and you tell me how bad this can get. It's like, well, we could lose some money or somebody could get hurt or death and maiming. Okay. And I'm on the train until it runs. And then what I would notice about Catherine is she would eventually go, but I know nobody's going to die, but maybe this could, well, that's probably not going to happen. And so this probably as bad as it gets. And I would just notice it would de-escalate it for her.
Yes. Yep.
And so I love that Bill asking questions 20 years ago and frustrating you and I endlessly in our early 20s. Be like, Bill, just give me an answer. He's like, no, I'm just going to
Yeah.
train you to ask better and better questions.
I know.
What a lovely
Yeah.
legacy. What a lovely human. Well, Callie, a delight as always. And I cannot believe that you were able to make time in between, you know, big TV interviews and 7 children and a husband and the HR company that you need to run, and the release of a stunning piece of literature. As let's make sure we get Alan Levi, who wrote Theo and Golden's quote right, a delight and a beautiful bit of art. So thank you for making it, and thank you for making time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, as we said before, they can find all things at calliemurray.com. And are there any other events? I know people are probably jealous. They see my autographed copy and my stunning little, book note that you've handed out. Is there any other places that they can be catching you soon?
I'll be in Denver later this week. We'll be at the Norcross Library in July with a friend and neighbor, Dale Russell. He was an investigative reporter, and he's going to do an interview with me about Norcross history, which is really fun.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, I'm speaking with some book clubs. I'll be talking to Catherine's book club in a
Yay!
couple of weeks. Yeah.
Oh, that's very exciting. Well, thank you for your question. What's the worst can happen? And I'm glad that when you ask yourself that, you're like, no, I think I still want to write the book. What's the worst can happen? So, thanks for joining us on an episode of One Great Question.
Thanks.
And